Hello, everybody. My name is Sylvain Rochon, and this is another episode about me writing my second book, Engineering Paradise, An Ideal World. And I'm starting something that I find more exciting than the previous sections. I've just started writing on the section for about the economy for the people. That's the actual working title for the section of the book. And the reason why it is for the people is because the notion of economy has to be, I guess, restructured in our minds. Whenever we talk about economy, usually we think about money. And money is a tool. It's not something that is like the basis of the economy. Really, economy is about a balance. It's about a ledger. Limited resources. And then usage. So, some assets and then some expenditures, right? So, and that's what it is. And in the, if you think about everything that we see around us, the fundamental basic elements of our economy is based on the raw resources, and then they are transformed into more complex resources. So that's one part of it, the actual transformation of our resources into something else. So there's an economy about that. Like each nation has a certain finite amount of resources, and then we try to recycle them. And the natural world also serves as a recycler. Plants create oxygen. Animals consume oxygen and create CO2, which also goes back to the plant. That's an example of a cycle. It's like a ledger. Something comes in, then something comes out, and we need to keep that in balance. That's why economy is usually also about balance. Now, money is a measure of some of these things, and we've also included interactions between people and services into a money economy. But right now, if we look at the ideal future where you have a lot of automation, we have to change the definition of economy to its more core role. We don't really want to consider it on a fundamental basis of money, even though money will be included to do fair trade, right? And the basic reason for that is because as we automate things, all these transformations of products will become cheaper. And the reason for that is that, like, most of the costs, the actual energy costs, is people exerting their own energy to produce. So we have employees, we have industrial workers, drivers. Like, that's all part of the transformation of raw materials to goods that we use, including the food that we eat, but also the products and services that are all around us. It's people expending energy to do it. Now, if we remove these individuals from the equation and automate these systems, then it goes back, really, all these transformations of products goes back to really the cost of the natural resources, because automated systems can receive the energy from the sun, right? And the sun is abundant. Just to give you an example, the total consumption of energy of the planet over a year, I believe it's over a year, I think, is 15 terawatts. That's a lot, okay? But if you just calculate the sun that hits the surface of the state of Texas, so only the state of Texas, the solar energy that hits the surface is 696 terawatts. That is 46 times the consumption, the total energy consumption of the whole planet. But that's just what hits Texas. So if you look only at solar energy, potential solar energy that we can capture, we have huge amounts of solar. So we can have robots that are essentially provisioned by energy provisioned using the sun, which is like, solar panels on their heads or on surfaces, and then they can just do whatever they need to do. Now, the second aspect of automation is that robots get used up. I mean, they need maintenance. replacements. And we can have automated systems that maintain other robots, and so on and so forth in the cycle, right? And even invent new robots, build new robots, manufacturers, like we already have manufacturers that build robots automatically. No humans need to be involved, or very, very few. And in our near future, we can decide to automate almost everything. And it's all supporting itself, including the miners and the loggers, and air capturing, and so all these systems that take the natural resources from the land, that end up being the robots, because these are all molecules that begin to get transformed, and all the manufacturing systems, they're all, and the maintenance, it's all automated, and they take their energy all from the sun, and they provide all the transformation and the transportation services that we need, no humans involved, because the humans are always the costly aspects of basically everything. Even now, with the amount of automation we already have, it's still, humans are still the most expensive, not only because we sleep, we eat, and we get sick, and there's all these problems, and we have, of course, word conflicts and things like that, but we also need to be compensated, because these are things we don't really want to do on like 40 hours a week or more. Usually we do it because we need to be paid to exchange for the products that we make. If we automate everything, like basically the economical cost is what is coming out of the earth. So the true economy that I described earlier. And with no humans involved, then the humans are just the consumers at the very end. And all the automated stuff can take care of itself using the sun and a portion of what it takes out of the earth, because that's the material they're made of. You get me? Now, just to make an analogy about reduction of cost, because that means everything would be less costly, right? Now, here's the analogy. If you take a printer, just a standard document printer, if you know a little bit, if you have one, you know that the major cost of running the printer is not the electricity itself. I mean, there is a cost to it, but it's very small. The main cost is the cost of the printer, but that's not even the main cost. That's fairly small, because printers last a long time. It's really the ink and the paper. Those are the main costs. One cartridge will give you like 500 documents or pages of pages, and 500 pages is usually about $5 or something like that. And a printer cartridge for 500 pages is going to be like $30. So your cost for 500 pages, or pages of documents, if you will, is $35. Okay, that's your cost. It doesn't matter what the file you're printing. It's always going to be, it's all, the cost is really the paper and the ink. Okay, those are the fed natural resources, if you will, in the example. If we look at 3D printing, which is a different type of printing, but very similar, what you're doing is that you're sending a file to the printer, so it's digital, like ones and zeros, a file that is a 3D object. And you give the 3D printer materials like either plastic, resin, molten titanium. We can do 3D printing using concrete, using all sorts of materials now. And it's getting more and more advanced. We can print things that are 50 microns across, that are fairly complex, to whole buildings without humans being involved, because it's all mechanical. And it's just the materials are put together, and you're creating a 3D object. Now, normally, when we buy something, like a 3D object in the market, the cost of it varies very widely. It's unrelated to its size sometimes. Like if you take, for example, let's say 10, just a 3D model. Let me pick out some example that makes sense here. Yeah, let's say a masterwork sculpture model bust of the head of Mahatma Gandhi. You know Gandhi? That weighs 10 kilograms. Fairly big, made out of metal, let's say. That's a file. It's digital, and it can be printed just like a Word document in a way, like as many times as possible, because you're not expending the digital asset. It's a 3D file. So that file can be printed millions of times if you want. And you're using a 3D printer, that's a file that goes in. The let's say metal or resin or whatever goes in. Then you're printing your Gandhi head, right? 10 kilograms. If it's plastic, it would be huge. But anyway, let's imagine it's metal, so that's a bit small. Now, if you use another file like a very simple cube, just a cube weighing 10 kilograms of material, same material, let's say some metal like iron, and you print it using the 3D printer, just like the document printer, the cost is really associated with the material that they bring in. For the document printer, the materials are ink and paper. For the 3D printer, it's going to be the metal. So whether it's a very complex and perhaps sophisticated and also a popular face like Gandhi, or a cube that is extremely very, very simple and boring, the cost is exactly the same. It's 10 kilograms of iron. So you have to look up the price per kilogram of iron, and that's going to be basically your cost. Because as far as electricity is concerned, both models would take almost exactly the same time to print. And the file itself, well, there's some value to it, just like a document. Somebody wrote a document at some point. There's some value to that sometimes, but, you know, give or take. But after the file's created and shared, especially on the internet, I mean, everybody's printing it. The cost is not really the file. Okay, so that's the analogy, and the 3D printing is real. Like, so things that would be like works of art, like a Rodin, which was sculpted a while ago. You can make if you have the 3D file of the Rodin, you know, if you know, like the thinker, I think it was a Rodin. You know, these big sculptures that are super expensive and famous because the originals were. Now you can have your own for the cost of the material that it is built on. So if it's resin, it's going to be cheaper. If it's metal, it's going to be a bit more expensive and heavy, and so on. And perhaps a different 3D printer is needed because not the same printers use metal or resin. But the point is, you can have some extremely sophisticated pieces of art that are supposed to have a high value, but for the same cost as just like a geometric shape. Okay, we're going into a world using automated systems like this and digital. We're getting into a world where the cost of things is really equal to the materials that are based off, and that changes everything, because that means that everything that we associate with cost is raw materials. And the second aspect of it is the subjective aspect of things. Now, my examples with the 3D printer, there's no subjective value in printing one or the other because they were both printed using a 3D printer, using a file, no big deal. But I'll give you another example. If your child makes a piece of art and you put it on your fridge, that has value to you. It has subjective value because it was a gift made by your child. It could be a painting made by a friend or family member. Well, that painting is probably not as well done as what a software with Photoshop can do, but it has a subjective value to you because it was done, and there's an emotional attachment. That person, it's unique. It was done at a certain point in time, just like the old arts. Okay, so cost of things would have these two components. Sometimes it would have the subjective value based on where it comes from, who made it, and things like that. You know, brands would still, you know, carry a weight if they're famous sometimes. Well, I have it printed by X brand or by this special individual, and then you have the material value of it. The variation of costs are based on the human labor and the number of layers it takes, you know, of human labor or different processes and transportation costs and all that stuff. A lot of that would actually go away because you are eliminating most, if not all, the human beings that need to be paid and that are imperfect, that are expensive, that are in the way of the actual of the cost. And a lot of businesses, you know, survive or fail based on how they can manage the cost of all that stuff. And right now, if you want to compete, you're trying to automate as much as possible because that in effect reduces cost, and then you have a higher profit margin. Then you can compete with the other companies to provide a certain product and services. So in a competitive landscape, costs are going down for them. And then subjectively, because there's a competition, the consumers are always seeing costs going down, right? And in a world soon where we can choose to, instead of being afraid of automation, to really push it forward and really automate most things using AI and all sorts of these of interesting technologies, we can bring the cost down to its bare bones, to strictly its objective value and its value in material. And that makes things way more accessible for everybody, because we're not expending as much energy like ourselves as human beings. We're spending our time doing things that we are enjoying, while all these automated systems are creating at as little economical and environmental costs as possible what we need and what we're asking for. And then we can also spend our time, because right now we have free time, to be creative and invent and innovate and experience the world and create this subjective value in society with each other. And that's the world we're trying to build. So I'm going to go ahead and create another video, which I will show only the following week, because I like to produce and make videos once a week, so that you guys can, you know, take it one at a time. And I'll be talking about like how things will be automated. So a little bit more description around that, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And I'll continue working around the economy and explaining in more detail how money would actually be involved and how we can actually finance all these things within that new paradigm. So stay tuned. I'll be back.